Of course, there are doubts whether bioanthropological methods would be sufficient to identify the missing person behind the cranes in the collection. And therefore, we try to change the paradigm by saying, okay, the results of this research must be questioned and evaluated from an African perspective, which includes not just communities, but in our case here, really African expertise, again from very, very different disciplinary backgrounds. And this research is a kind of academic co-production among disciplines, but also origins and personalities. And therefore, learning about our own past and becoming aware of its own positionality is certainly an important part of it.
Thank you very much, Professor Mehler. As you talk about our ancestors, how their cranes have been treated in the past relates to what was just mentioned about those scholars who were eugenists involved in racial studies using the remains of these sub-Saharan Africans, unfortunate people, just for their pseudo-scientific goals. So Professor Mehler's response shows that you are actually learning and also questioning your past, but also the past of the university through this project, which indeed is very revealing. So to a large extent, the Freiburg University is also a well-placed institution to decolonize itself.
I mean, yeah, that is a bit more emotional, I have to admit. But the idea is, I mean, you look at those boxes in which those cranes are put, and in some anonymous place. And earlier they were potentially part of a collection that was exhibited and was used for teaching purposes, etc. So it was very strongly instrumentalized. And these are then objects, and to reinvigorate them is really difficult.
Well, so what we're seeing from the collection are basically practices whereby living human beings, probably people who died, and at the same moment they are collected and processed. The processing, as we realize from the forensic study, involves scrapping off soft tissue from the hard tissue. The processes are so inhumane because it actually involved the use of blunt instruments to do this scalping. And I tell you, most of the scars that went through processes of scalping show evidence of this scraping on the scars. So I can visualize how these ancestors were processed, scalping flesh from the scar is actually indeed a sort of, let's say, violence that was perpetuated in the name of science.
So the question really is also, could there be a more decent place to store them, or could there be a burial here? What would we actually suggest in such instances? I mean, those 5 maca cranes that could be identified without further doubt are the main exception, where we have much information. So let's proceed and conduct research to explore a possible restitution process, because they don't have to remain with us. And for all the others, I mean, you need also to find, I would not say very quick solutions, but timely solutions, and not wait another 20 years until the next research project, to establish better ways of identification or whatever. So that there is some urgency, I would say, to find solutions also for them.
But if you are treating them as an ancestor, the environment will have to be more comfortable and more presentable than currently the case. But I know, of course, it's a process. They are in the process of being prepared for a final destination where it will be more comfortable for them. You know, in most source regions in Africa, once you pass on, you are put in a coffin. You are not put in a box, because that could be very, very demeaning, casually speaking. So, if and even if somebody dies in a family that is poor, they are able to afford at least a basic, simple coffin to give that person a decent burial. So, when we now accept that these are ancestors, I think they should be taken care out of boxes, placed in mini coffins, specially prepared mini boxes, just to show some respect. So, so that they are in a state of transition, right? If they are still kept in boxes, you know what that means? That means basically that they are bioanthropological specimens.
In order to emphasize this, from the perspective of University of Freiburg and maybe the ministry, we acknowledge that they are in a transition to a different situation. We could de-access them from the catalogue. And this is something that could be changed to acknowledge that, okay? So we are in a transition, and we are ready to change your situation for the better.
Well, yes, I think it would be a good signal which shows sensitivity to the status of the remains. Once we articulate and are willing to articulate that these are ancestors of the people, then why not let us also change the conditions and the labels that we're giving to them? So I think the issue of deaccession and the legal status in the case of human bones also brings home the issue of crime and the need actually to investigate the crime. So bioanthropology revealing the atrocities on the scar is evidence that can be used legally to resolve doubt. Professor, similarly, if there is evidence that needs to be contested, then I think the issue of DNA can be, mandated by the legal system to find the truth. Bioanthropology is a tool which can be used both ways. It can be used to foster eugenist practices, and it can be used to resolve crime. So let's not just take one dimension and not consider the second. These bones, these skeletons are in transition here. They are not in a rush. So the best closure we can give them is to help connect them to the right source, regions, and people.